Erich Fromm was one of the greatest psychoanalysts of the 20th century. And he believed that human beings have two basic modes of existence: the having mode and the being mode. The having mode is we have needs, even basic ones like oxygen and shelter and enough food. We have to be in a having mode where we acquire and take care of things, but then the having mode is also acquiring a lot of things we don't really need, and the having mode has to do with controlling things and manipulating things. And then he said we have another mode, the being mode. That's focused on those we love around us, rootedness, connection, community. The being mode is focused more on growing in our best values for us, becoming the person we're meant to be. That's the being mode. He said we need both modes of existence, but the problem is we get stuck in the having mode. And he said it's the having mode that breaks up a sense of human unity. Instead, we're in competition. But the being mode naturally creates a unity. I heard a minister once say that joy and meaning meet at church. Because in church, you are not what you have, you are who you love. Oh, you see, church is about the being mode. You are who you love. Those around you, yourself, God. You heard those great words that opened Jesus' Sermon on the Mount this morning. And it sounds to me like that's all the being mode. Not only is it not about having, it's blessed are the poor. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the sad. Blessed are the gentle. Blessed are the merciful. That's all the being mode. Being the people we're meant to be. Matthew chapter 5 is the very center of our gospel. If you want to remember what good religion is about, if you ever lose a focus on what all of this is about, it's about gentleness, humility, mercy, heart. Religion can go really sideways in our world. Stay focused on His words. I can hear the sound of His voice in those words. Jesus' voice, you can hear it. On Thursday night, I had one of our significancy events, and those are a mashup. It's not a worship service, but it's not a lecture either. I give a monologue with some spirit, there's live music, and then we go into like a podcast-style interview, and it was on bad religion. That was the theme. And I was able to interview Juan Carlos and my wife because they've experienced some bad religion in their life, and I got to hear their stories. My wife, Becca, all her extended family is in East Tennessee. And all her whole life, she would go back for summers to East Tennessee. Real poor area. And she remembers when she was 10 years old, she went to church one day at the little Baptist church they would worship at all summer, but her parents didn't come with her. And she was sitting in the pews. And in the middle of the service, the preacher walked down the aisle with a microphone and stuck that microphone right in this 10-year-old's face and said, "Do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior?" She didn't know what that meant, really. And that seems like religion doing that kind of manipulation and control to shove a mic in the front of a 10-year-old's face in the middle of worship. It was all about what the preacher wanted to do. He wanted to have a preaching moment. It wasn't about human beings. There was no gentleness or humility in that. She didn't know what to say, but she was 10 years old, and she felt that something important was happening in the room, that all the adults were listening, and so she said, yes. She didn't know what it meant. Throughout the summer, she became more sullen and quiet. Her parents noticed about 6 weeks later that she hadn't been herself. They said to her, "What's going on with you?" And she told them she hadn't spoken of it. She said, "I was in church and the preacher shoved a mic in front of my mouth, and I know it was about something really important, but I answered yes, but I don't know what I said yes to." Little 10-year-old. Bad religion when it's about promoting itself, manipulating human beings instead of just gentleness. I get the sense, to be honest, in East Tennessee, that's mostly the ministers that go sideways. Because if you listen to the people in East Tennessee, you hear that same vision of getting across the Jordan. There can be a better world. It's hard. This life can be hard. But just the human message, we're striving for something better. Pastor Juan Carlos, when I interviewed him, he spoke of growing up in a deeply fundamentalist group, dispensationalist, always looking to when Jesus was going to come back, and if you weren't right with God, you'd be left behind. And he spoke about how as a little boy, he would be in his bed at night thinking that the world could end that night, and had he confessed all his sins, and wondering if he'd be okay. Bad religion, when it loses humility, gentleness, heart. On Thursday night, I talked a little bit about what I think the attributes of bad religion are, and just to share one that I spoke about, I think you can tell when there's bad religion at play if it seems smug. Oh, I think smugness is a mark of bad religion, because we're supposed to be about humility. But religion gets smug all the time. I mean, let me give you an example of smuggery. When religion starts thinking it's the one true religion. There are 40,000 different Christian denominations in the world, but watch smuggery at play. Almost every one of them will say we're the best religion, that we're somehow the one true religion. It's pure smuggery, and it's really ridiculous because there's 40,000 different groups somehow thinking they're the one true Christianity. It's comical, really, if you could laugh at it. And it sounds so smug. Do you know when a child gives their father a t-shirt that says, "World's Greatest Dad"? It's an act of endearment and love. So the dad wears it, right? Because it's just an act of endearment between the two. But he doesn't actually think he's the world's greatest dad. Like, you wouldn't walk up to him and go, "Hey, do you really think you're the world's greatest dad?" I mean, there's a billion dads, right? More than that. No, it's an act of endearment. But oddly, religion will put on this t-shirt that says, "We're the world's best religion," and they actually believe it. Smuggery. I have to watch out for that happening here. It happens to me all the time. I love our church, and in our world, you got to hype everything and you got to self-promote it. So I watch myself on like online videos like when I go on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and I'm talking about some church event, and I'm always saying it's going to be the most amazing thing ever. And our church is so incredible. And I'm thinking, when I watch these videos, I'm falling into smuggery. Why am I talking about how we're the best? Best is not a theological category. I heard a professor say that one time. The category best is not even in our gospel. If you hear us somehow talking like we're the best, it's not the gospel at all. Jesus in Luke 14 says, when you see a table, don't go to the seat of honor, go to the last seat. Good religion is all humble. Sometimes I get worked up. I think we're special because I love us and I love what we're about. But I can fall into smugness. I hear myself. Sometimes I talk about how amazing the Congregational church is. That we were the first church to ordain a woman in the 1850s. That's amazing. And that we were the first church, the Congregational denomination, to ordain an African American to be a minister in the 1850s. I'll talk about how we were the first church to ordain an openly gay person as a minister in 1972, and I start feeling kind of puffed up about this because it's really cool. And I'll talk about how we're an intellectual church. We founded Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth and Cal Berkeley, and I'll get kind of puffed up about the Congregational denomination, right? You have to watch out for smugness. Because what I don't tell you is the Congregational church, we were the one burning witches. That we were originally the Puritans, the fundamentalist sect that had their thumb on people. I don't talk about that. No, good religion doesn't have to hype itself. It's not trying to be the best. Good religion. I didn't have time on Thursday night to talk about what it would look like. Let me just tell you one thing about good religion. I think good religion, if you watch it, it will be trying to resist the depersonalization that takes place in our world. Let me explain. Good religion knows that every person, every soul, is of intrinsic and inherent worth and dignity. And good religion will resist anything that is trying to depersonalize or rob people of their dignity, their inherent worth as a child of God. And there are so many forces of depersonalization in our world when human beings become just objects to be manipulated. That's when it's happening. When the human soul is turned into a thing. And the most radical form of depersonalization in our world is war, of course. Because human beings in war are just things that need to be, for some geopolitical strategy or some national interest, things that have to be destroyed or moved around or manipulated. It's a radical act of depersonalization. You will hear today that Israelis and Palestinians are dying, but attune your ears, because when you put categories on human beings, that's depersonalization. It's not Israelis and Palestinians, it's human beings. It is souls. It is children of God. So anyway, attune your ears to depersonalization, because it will ruin our world. And there are so many systems and ideologies and organizations that turn human beings into things. All the ways we talk about it. Who deserves health care? It's bean counting, how we do health care in this world. In our world, souls are turned into things. And the church and any good religion will resist that to the end. You heard Jesus' voice today. That gentleness and humility.